of Silicon Grapevine. Today, my guest is Coby Hanoch, who's the CEO of Weebit Nano. Coby, hello.
Hi, Nitin. How are you?
I'm good. Well, Coby, I'm quite impressed with your 45 years in the industry, but you've got some really good stories to tell, and also, I think, interesting things as well. So, this part of this show is just to go into a little bit about you and your profile, but before we do that, just quickly tell us, Weebit Nano. You've been there, I think, about 6 years as a CEO. Tell us. In summary, your elevator pitch. What's the company do?
Yeah, it's almost 7 years already.
Oh, almost 7 years.
So
Okay.
Weebit is developing a non-volatile memory technology called ReRAM, resistive RAM. We've been developing it for quite some time and working very closely with our partner CEA Leti in France. We need a fab to develop such a technology, and they have a lot of knowledge and experience in this domain. We're now at the point where the technology is ready for commercialization. We actually qualified it already at 85 and 125 degrees in a couple of fabs. We already demonstrated that we can operate even at 150 degrees and reach good endurance of 100,000 cycles, and are now engaged with I would say the majority of the top foundries and IDMs. There's really an understanding in the market now that people really want ReRAM. It's a good replacement for Flash, and we're happy to be there.
Okay. Well, I think you gave me a demo earlier this year at Embedded World, and I think that was the first time I really sat with you and to understand it a bit more. But that's covered elsewhere in EE Times and Embedded.com and other magazines. But let's
Yeah.
go into you. So tell us how you got into did you always want to do electronics, or was there something that sort of triggered you into sort of coming into this sort of discipline?
So actually, when I was getting ready for college, my dream was to be a physicist. Actually, even a nuclear physicist or something like that. And I was lucky that a good friend of my dad's was the head of the unemployment agency in Israel. And when he heard about it, he told my dad, I'd love to see your son all the time, but I'm not sure that that's what you want. So I had another thought, and a good friend of mine, we're talking about 1977, actually. And a good friend of mine at the time was telling me, there's this computer thing which is really neat, and I think you would really enjoy it. And why don't you go study computers? That's what I've been doing, and it's really nice. And so that's actually how I ended up in computers. And then my natural tendency is always to want to understand how things work under the hood. So, he recommended software, but very quickly I realized that I want to understand how this computer works really. And so I started diving into the hardware side of things, and that's where I am.
Yeah, and you started at National. I mean, it seems like a lot of my guests started off at National Semiconductor. I'm not sure it's because of my LinkedIn profile, my connections, but you started at National Semi, just like I did. Tell us, what is that kind of like where you felt you got a lot of grounding into what you were doing?
Well, that too happened by mistake. I
Sure.
was, I won't go into exactly how things work with the Israeli army, but I had a special a special agreement with the army where they let me do my studies first and then join the army so that I could serve in the profession that I learned. And normally in the summers, you're supposed to do military training. But I ended up having hepatitis after during the second year
Mm.
at the university, and I couldn't do anything in the summer. And I said, okay, what am I going to do? Maybe I'll just go work in this company here in Haifa near the Technion. And a friend of again another friend of my dad said, there's this new company, this National Semiconductor that just opened a center in Herzliya, and your son should talk to them. and I went there to talk to them about a summer internship kind of thing, and I ended up being there 11 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so, what were you doing there? What kind of work?
Well, the internship thing, actually, I did, a small software project, but then they asked me to help verify one of their systems. They were developing an in-circuit emulator, an ICE, at the time,
Mm.
and I was sitting there and building the system that would check it and make sure that it does what it's supposed to. That's actually what pulled me into the verification space, where I
Oh,
spent,
okay. Yeah.
more than 35 years, I guess,
Yeah.
in that space. I really enjoyed. Again, I loved learning not only what the system is supposed to do, but also what it's not supposed to do. Because in the verification space, that's the real challenge, to make sure that it does what it's supposed to and it doesn't do other things. And yeah, and that pulled me into my career in verification.
Interesting. No, so I mean, at that time, I was when I was there, I was working with the NSC 800. I guess you were doing some stuff with that as well, the Z80 processor,
We were actually developing in Israel. We were developing the first 32-bit
the 32 or
microprocessor in the
32.
world at the time. So
Yeah,
it started off called 16032, and then they
that's
switched
it.
the
Yeah,
name to 13016. But yeah, that was a
yeah,
very interesting project.
yeah. So then you left National Semiconductor and then went to France. I guess,
Yeah.
and that's really sort of continued your verification sort of career working on a supercomputer.
Yes, it was, again, all of these things that happen sometimes by coincidence. Um, I was at National. In those days, verification engineers were always considered second class. And at a certain point, after being there 11 years and not feeling recognized, I was really frustrated. I went on vacation to the south of Israel with my wife. We left my kids with my parents, and then when I came to pick the kids up, on the table in the living room, there was this in the newspaper. There was this big article: "Join the world's number one computer team." And
Oh,
obviously, it
yes.
caught my eye, and I applied. And it was a project, a European supercomputer project in France, and
Mm.
I ended up going there for 3 years.
I mean, soon afterwards, I think was one of your first successes, Veracity. But you say you got together with four friends, but yeah, what triggered that thought that you want to do a startup? I know you worked in a small startup before that. So
Mhm.
what was the trigger for saying, okay, let's do Veracity?
So one of us, Yoav Hollander, he actually worked as a contractor. I knew him for many, many years. Actually, the verification project on the ICE way back in 1980 was a project, or even before, was a project that I did on his. He was developing the ICE. So after he left National and then Digital Equipment asked him to help develop verification environments for them. And he decided he's sick and tired of every time there's a new chip, he needs to develop a whole new verification environment. And he said, we have to automate this thing. So as a consultant, he started developing the tool that's called SpecMan. And then one day he calls me up and he says, Coby, you won't believe it. There's this company here that wants to buy it, but wants to buy this tool that I've been developing, and I have no clue what to do.
Oh,
And I did one of the most thorough marketing analysis in the world, and it took me about 3 seconds to tell him, well, Verilog Excel costs $40,000. What you do is definitely not less than that, so you should just tell them it costs $40,000 per license. And guess what? That was the price for so many years later. It remained there. So I'm very proud of my marketing analysis.
but you know what? Through your career, I think, and what I've read about you is basically you're sort of very focused on sales. I know that's kind of what you fell into that, but you seem to have that knack for turning things around or analyzing and figuring out what is a good commercial venture.
Well, I started off as an engineer, and actually, I have to, quotes, blame. Catherine Cranen,
Yeah.
for really forcing me into sales. I mean, I didn't believe I could even sell heaters to the Eskimos,
Mm,
and she just came to me and she said, "I can see that you'll be a good sales guy," and she basically forced me to move into sales at Vericity in the early days, and help her out on the sales side. I have to say, I have to thank her because I really love it. I love big challenges.
mm.
And I realized that the challenges that you have on the business side are very often even more elaborate, more extreme than what you have on the design side. And I really enjoy, making it work, taking startups. That's become my expertise, taking small startups that are just coming out with a new product and defining how to sell them and going out to market and really building them, etc.
So it's the analytical and sales, not just the sales. I think you've got that
Yeah.
whole breadth then, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And the challenge, I think the challenge of worldwide sales has really intrigued me. In my childhood, I moved around quite a bit. I lived in many different places. I learned different cultures. And then when I got to doing sales worldwide, I definitely got to leverage that. And I really enjoyed that challenge.
Well, I mean, we'll come to that now, actually. Before, so you say you've lived in lots of, you relocated in lots of. You started at 3 months. You relocated to Uruguay, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, that was my first my first relocation was when I was 3 months old. The first language that I actually spoke was Spanish because my nanny was speaking Spanish to me. So yeah, that's how I started off.
Anyway, obviously, your parents had some reason to go there. I mean, how long were you there in Uruguay?
Yeah. Well, my parents ended up working for what's called the Jewish Agency. This is an organization that basically goes to different Jewish communities in the world and helps them kind of organize the Jewish life, the Jewish culture. They help the Jews who want to immigrate to Israel and so on. So, yeah, my dad normally would manage the local Jewish community center. My mom would be a Hebrew teacher, folk dance teacher, etc.
Yeah, and I think Uruguay, and then what I think I understood from you is that
Uh,
the big thing about doing sales and what you do, and the companies you worked with is just managing the different cultures from different within organizations and customers as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in first grade, so from Uruguay, we came back to Israel. Then, when I was in first grade, we moved to New York. I was there for 4 years. We moved back to Israel. And then, when I was in ninth grade, we moved to Texas
Wow.
for 3 years. We moved back to Israel. Then, as an adult, we mentioned, the project in France that I went to for 3 years. I came back to Israel. Then, when we started Vericity, basically, Catherine insisted that I come out to the US to help out. So I was 2 years in Silicon Valley. And then
Mm.
I was asked to set up the sales activity in Europe. So I moved to Paris and I was there 2 years. And so, yeah, I moved around quite a bit. I learned from all of this to appreciate the different cultures in the world.
Mm.
And it's really amazing how people in the world, they have this very strong tendency to just believe that everyone thinks the way that they do. Everyone has a similar logic, and when they say something, they have this assumption that people understand exactly what they meant. Now, in reality, I have endless examples of how, one person says something and means, one thing. The person who hears it sometimes understands exactly the opposite,
Yes.
and it's just insane. I find myself in many cases, basically just mediating between cultures because everyone's speaking English, but everyone's understanding something else. Even Americans and British, you think that they speak the same language. Well, they don't.
Yeah.
And so I've really enjoyed understanding the different cultures. You also learning to speak some languages at different levels, but enough to also help me understand the culture. Through languages, you can understand the culture as well,
Yes.
and so it's been intriguing, and I love it.
I think I fully understand that because I spend a lot of time traveling around the world as well for my work. And you have to say, like, when I was PR manager for Plessey Semiconductor, I traveled to 5 countries in Asia, and then 2 countries in Europe, and then UK, and then all around the US. And just the same message you have to say in very different ways, and because people understand it in different ways. So from a PR point of view, that was very interesting. But also, then I started working with government, and then it was again, working with whether it's South America, whether it's Asia, whether it's Middle East. So many different ways in which you have to tell the story. So,
Yes.
I mean, I don't have that business experience that you have, but I think understand that cultural difference. It's quite interesting. Anyway, so Veracity, I think you after about 9 to 10 years, you sold that to Cadence. Was that something that you thought, okay, this is a natural sort of progression for us, or was there something that Cadence approached you and said, well, yeah, we think we'd like to buy you.
Well, the sale of Veracity was one of the worst moments of my life.
Oh no.
And it was actually the level of frustration that I felt was really high. What happened was in those days, we were selling SpecMan, which was a great tool. We were giving good support. Customers loved us. And we had a situation where, for a certain period, I was managing the sales in Europe and in Asia. And in the US, without going into details, but some mistakes were made,
Hmm.
and the competition was Vera at the time.
Oh yes, yes.
And we were beating Vera everywhere. I mean, in Europe, in Asia, we had like 99% market share. I wasn't aware of anyone using Vera. Um, in the US, somehow, the sales team made some mistakes, and they lost to Vera a couple of times. And by the way, at that point, when Synopsys was seeing that they're losing with Vera, they basically invented System Verilog and combined Vera with Verilog, and tried to coin that as a new thing. At the beginning, all the customers didn't really want that. I think there were several mistakes made on the Veracity side where, there was panic. Synopsys managed to make it look as if Intel and ARM were using System Verilog. It was completely not true, but they managed to make the market believe that Intel and ARM are using System Verilog and they're endorsing System Verilog. And that caused panic at Weebit, and at Weebit, I'm saying at Veracity.
University. Yeah.
And Veracity was starting to play defensive. Now, what happened was the board started panicking and saying, "Oh my God, this System Verilog thing is going to take over our sales." Back in 2020, in 2004,
Fall. Fall.
in
Yeah.
the U.S., were actually way behind because of all of the stuff that was going on. So I'm not sure who approached whom, if the board approached Cadence or Cadence approached us, but the board decided we really need to consider
An exit.
this option. Actually, it was 2003.
Mm.
And so actually at that time, the board appointed me to take over the sales in the US and try to fix things. I came to the US, I realized what was going on. I ran from one customer to the other, apologized for what happened, and begged them to give us another chance. And I was bringing all the customers back on board. And then towards the end of 23, the CEO asks me, "Well, how much do you think we're going to sell next year?" Now, I'm thinking he wants to negotiate my quota with him. So, I'm thinking, okay, I know we're going to be selling, at least, 150 million, probably much more than that. But the board, they won't believe that we can reach even 100 million. So I told him, you know what? It's going to be tough, but we can probably make 80 million,
Oh
next
no.
year. And he didn't tell me why he was asking. He went to the board and he said, look, even this optimist Coby says we'll sell only 80 million next year. We have to sell the company.
Oh.
And so they basically decided to sell the company based on that. When actually I went to the sales team, by the way, and I told everyone, listen, guys, you know, here are your quotas for next year. I want each and every one of you to sign now, commit that you're going to do at least double quota, if not more. And every single one of the salespeople had no problem to sign that. We were going to have this stellar year in 2004, but we never got to it because the company was
Oh.
sold. And actually, literally the day that the CEO calls me to his office to tell me that they sold the company, and now I'm going into his office with a smile like this because I just closed, this amazing deal,
Deal.
tens of millions of dollars with Intel, and I have the PO in my hand, and I walk into his office and I put it on the table. I'm so proud of myself. And he says, Coby, sit down. We sold the company. So you can imagine how
Yeah.
frustrating it
Frustration.
was.
Yeah.
I think, that's one of the really great examples of how, a board didn't listen to, or didn't even work with the management team. And, there was a huge misunderstanding there because obviously, if they would have just told me they're thinking of selling the company, I would have told them, hey, next year we're going to sell at least 150 million.
Yeah.
So that's
Well,
that's
yeah.
that's
We
the
learn.
story in a short version.
Yeah. Well, we learned from those, I guess. But I mean, that didn't stop you because then after that, I think one of the things I think that shows your character is, well, you said you didn't want to leave until everybody was happy through that
Mhm.
transition, from your staff at Veracity. So I think, yeah, that's quite that shows you're a people person, I guess.
Yeah, it was very important for me. Veracity, I believe that in a company, you really, people always say, oh, it needs to feel like a family. I honestly believe that. Actually, the CEO of Veracity one time came to me and he said, I don't know how you do it, but you treat your employees as if they're your kids. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable. And it's true. I mean, for me, I think that, when we're working together, we need to be totally committed to each other. Just a few weeks ago, I was in this workshop and they were talking about the fact that employees are not loyal to their companies. And I said, well, what do you expect? Companies let people go. There's just a glimpse of a bad quarter and they already let people go. If the company isn't loyal to the employees, why should they be loyal to the company? So I actually believe that, there needs to be loyalty in both directions. I'm very proud to say that at Weebit, for example, nobody has left the company yet except for one employee that really, we didn't have the right fit there. But nobody has left for all these years that I'm in the company. At Veracity, we had an amazing atmosphere, amazing bonding. And so for me, it was, so natural that I'm not going to leave until I know that each and every one of my employees has found his place in Cadence. They're happy, everything's set up. And then, it took, kind of about half a year, a little more, and then I left.
okay. Now, I mean, you did so that was 2004 or five, I think. 2004,
Mhm.
five. Sorry, you sold
Five already, yeah.
to Cadence. Um, I mean, there's a lot of years and since you sort of joined Weebit, and we're not going to go through that whole detail. But what take us through some of the highlights, but also what brought you to Weebit? Was it something that you thought, okay, this is an interesting company, or somebody approached you, or because I think through your career after that, you've been brought in to save companies, rescue companies. I think because of your sales acumen.
Yeah, as I said, I like to come in and take companies. Actually, after Veracity, the company that I went to was going bankrupt. They already let go 80 out of 100 employees, and
Yeah,
and they were just about to shut down the company, and they brought me in to save the company. I'm very proud to say today they're one of the leaders
good.
in their domain in optic communication. I've been going through several companies that needed help. With Weebit, what happened was, well, it started off in 2015. The neighbor across the street from me was telling me about this new memory company that they're setting up. They're looking for a CEO, and can I help them? And I told him I'm busy now. I tried to help them. I couldn't find a good candidate. 2 years later, he calls me up and he says, "You remember that memory company we talked about? Well, I have to leave the board. I'm moving to another VC, and I recommended that they take you to the board." So I went to meet Daddy and the previous CEO of Weebit, and the previous CEO went to Daddy and said, "Well, I really need to leave because of personal reasons, but Coby seems to be a good candidate to replace me." So that's how I ended up at Weebit.
Right
It
place,
was
right time. Right place, right time.
Yeah, yeah. It was The company was still very young. There were only two engineers in the company, and the whole company was five people, including me.
Mm.
So it was really the very early stages. And yeah, it's been an amazing ride.
So let's talk a little bit about uh, what you feel is your greatest personal achievements. You've got a long career. I guess there's a lot, but is there something that you say, wow, I'm really proud of that?
Oh, yeah, there are several things. I mean, I'm obviously very proud of what we did at Vericity.
Yeah,
For me, that was a huge highlight. And, that PO that I got from Intel that I told you
e-
about,
exactly. Yeah,
a PO, one PO of tens of millions of dollars for an EDA tool. That's already,
yeah,
for a smaller company, that was a huge achievement. I was very proud of that. I was proud of several cases where, I helped either turn companies around or just help them build their sales. At Jasper, when I joined, basically they were selling in the US, Europe, and Asia were not really working. By the way, mostly because of cultural issues.
mm,
That was really the main thing. I went in, in 3 years, we doubled the sales, and then Cadence acquired us.
mm,
Um, I think Weebit has actually been, I joined Weebit, and I don't know how many people know, but Weebit is a public company. Actually, round A
yes,
funding was going public. And so I joined when we were already a public company. And then I found out that well, not just two, but a bunch of the early investors decided, I mean, they're kind of professional investors. They wanted to move on to the next thing. And we were coming up on 2 years after the IPO or reverse
yes,
takeover that we did.
yes.
And they decided to just pull out their money. And guess what? They had about 40% of the company, and they were just selling shares like crazy. Our share price just went, ooh, and that was a huge challenge to just save the company, to just
Mm,
really be there and not give up and go against everything. And, it took me more than half a year of, very, very rough times to actually get stop this, basically find people who took over the shares of these guys, stabilize the company, and then move on. And then we got to the point where there was COVID,
mm,
and the company, again, we just couldn't raise money. The impact of the previous story was still in the air. People didn't really want to invest in Weebit. We were almost going into a death spiral, and again, just hanging in there, pushing, not giving up. Eventually we managed to do a good raise and take off, and
good,
I'm
good.
extremely proud of Weebit.
What excites you about the industry right now?
Oh, well, I love this industry because there's never a dull moment. It's I think almost the only industry in the world, if not the only, where every year you have so much progress, you have so many new things. It's just amazing. So I just love this industry. And the fact that you constantly need to learn, you constantly need to evolve. If you just stop for 1 or 2 years, you're already so far behind, it's hard to catch up again. So that's really the main thing. I mean, you can go into details, and there's all
Mm.
the AI stuff that's happening now, and quantum, which I have to admit I'm still not managing to really understand.
Neither am I.
Quantum and all of that. I'm still trying to get my head around that one. But all of these new technologies coming out, and you look at autonomous vehicles, and you look at, yeah, I mean, there's so much innovation. And by the way, living in Israel is the most amazing thing. I mean, you go into any coffee shop, and half the tables are talking about new startups, new things that they want to do. People are coming up to me, almost on a daily basis with ideas. Even I take a taxi to the airport, and the taxi driver wants to set up a startup with me. It's like
Is That's amazing. Yeah.
it's fun, and just this really this innovation, this constantly thinking of new things and improving things. It's just so awesome.
What do you do for leisure? What's your hobby? Personal? Do you have any time? I know you have a large family.
Well, my family is definitely a key part of it. Yeah, I have 6 kids and 4 grandchildren already.
Yeah, wow.
So
Yeah.
quite a span of ages and everything. And I really, really enjoy spending time with them every moment that I have. I mean, my passion is also swimming. It sometimes is
Okay.
more challenging because I need to go to a swimming pool. So you need to have a certain slot of time, which I don't always have.
Well, come to England and you can do the channel to France.
I actually like swimming also long distances. So I never tried something like the channel, but yeah. So that's really, but just spending time with my family. Even uh, people are kind of sometimes amazed at the fact I work with Australia, so I have to wake up early in the morning,
Yes.
and before the day ends over there. But I try to clean my table as fast as I can, and then I go with my wife for half an hour at the local coffee shop, and we just sit there. We do crossword puzzles, and we talk about
Excellent.
the day, the plans, and everything. And I mean, it's those little moments that are so precious, and that I enjoy so much. With her, and then with the kids, just playing or talking, and so on. That's really the
Excellent. Okay, so last question, because I think we're coming to end of time on this. What would you advise young Coby? What's your advice to youngsters based on your experience in life and business?
well, maybe 2 or 3 things. I mean, the first thing is, when I was younger, I was a real perfectionist. I needed everything to be really super, the best possible. And I actually had one of my managers tell me, that, I'm a great engineer, everything's great, but I just need to understand that good enough is good enough. And I think that was a very important lesson. The enemy of good is best or better. And it took me time to learn to accept that, once you have a good enough solution, move on. You have so many other things to do.
Mm.
And I'm glad I got that advice from that manager. The second thing is, we have 2 ears and one mouth. We need to listen double of what we speak. So many people have a tendency, and I used to have this tendency of just wanting to express myself. I knew that I had things that I considered important, that I considered, worth saying, and I wasn't really listening to the other guy. And that's a big mistake. You need to listen to the other people, take your time, understand what they're saying, understand who they are, where they're from, and figure out what they really mean. And I think that's, again, the key thing. Not what you understand from their English, but what they meant to say when they said the sentence. It's okay to be quiet. It's okay to even have quiet moments in a discussion before you respond. You'll be able to really manage things so much better and respond better, and you'll be way more successful when you actually, give yourself the time to listen, understand before you respond.
Well, Coby Hanoch, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.